I'm Jarrett Carpenter, and this is More Than Blockchain. On this episode, let's talk about the halving. If you are watching this and it is before April 19th or April 20th, 2024, you are pre-halving. What does this mean? It means that the block reward or the block subsidy that is given to the Bitcoin miners to secure the Bitcoin network is still around 6.25 Bitcoins. However, if you're watching this after, the block reward is now down to 3.125, or it's much less. It's half of what it was. And that is essentially a great description of what the halving is. Contrary to popular belief, the halving is not when the overall 21 million Bitcoin cap gets cut in half and now we only have 10.5 million. That is not the halving. The halving, however, is what I've just described. It's when the block reward that is given to the miners, thanking them for securing the Bitcoin network, is cut in half. As it is right now, every 10 minutes, there is a block reward of about 6.25 Bitcoin. However, after April 19th or April 20th, I've seen differing dates as to when it should happen here in the year 2024, the block reward will get cut down to 3.125. This is part of the rules-based monetary setup that is the Bitcoin protocol that governs Bitcoin, or then BTC. This is super important to understand when trying to grasp how Bitcoin works. I first got into Bitcoin in 2017. Many of you have already heard the story how, so I'm not going to bore you. But at that time, I had no idea where I was in the halving cycle. Even when I came back to Bitcoin in late 2019, early 2020, I still wasn't even sure where we are in the Bitcoin cycle. And when I mean the Bitcoin cycle, I mean the halving cycle. As the block rewards get cut in half, and they'll eventually go down to zero, as you can see from the graph on the screen, Bitcoin becomes more scarce as the reward that's given to the miners becomes more scarce. Now, if you want a more in-depth dive into what the Bitcoin halving is and how it's going to affect miners specifically, go check out the link I'm going to leave below in the description, or you're listening to a podcast platform, go check it out in the description. It breaks down what the Bitcoin halving is and, like I said, how it's going to affect miners. I'm going to go ahead and give you a little bit of my opinion on how it's going to affect miners here because I think it's important. Miners right now are gearing up for the halving. What are they doing? They're doing three things primarily, and there's some other stuff that they're likely doing, but let's focus on the three things. Number one, if you're mining Bitcoin right now, you're trying to upgrade your fleet. What does this mean? You're trying to take some of the old hardware and replace it with the new hardware. If you're watching this on an iPhone or listening to it on an iPhone, you know that every 3 to 4 years, you're going to have to update your hardware to kind of keep up with the software. The same is for Bitcoin. Bitcoin miners need to update their hardware, meaning their miners, their ASICs, to be able to keep up with the software. You see, in the world of crypto and in the world of Bitcoin and really blockchain, the software tells the hardware what to do. Where for many, many years before blockchain, the hardware would tell the software what to do. So that's the first thing that's top of mind for miners. Are they updating their hardware? Are they getting the most efficient hardware online? So that way when the block reward is cut in half, they can still remain profitable and have profitability by increasing efficiency. Number two, many miners are diversifying. What does this mean? Many Bitcoin miners, publicly traded and non-publicly traded miners, are trying to diversify their portfolio. They're trying to actually add compute to the new big elephant in the room that's coming to global compute outside of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, which is AI. So there we go. We have update miners diversify their overall portfolio by basically creating infrastructure and buying, not miners, but buying compute to be able to support the growth and the boom of artificial intelligence. And then finally, number three, negotiating energy costs. Energy costs are one of those variable inputs that miners have to deal with. And this is really, really important. So if you're getting your power at 3 cents a kilowatt and you can talk it down to 2.8 cents a kilowatt, due to the amount of power you may be using in the megawatts and the exahash you have online, this could be make or break for your particular mining operation. So those are the three things that miners are doing. Now, if you're watching this and you're not mining, either home mining or you're doing some kind of a hosted mining option, then you may be interested as to how this is going to affect the market. Bitcoin historically, after each halving, has gone down by around 40%. In 2012, 2016, and 2020, the average drop-off of Bitcoin price directly after the halving was 40%. Now, we may or may not see that this time. We know that we shouldn't base future actions off past performance, but this past performance does give us some insight into what may happen. If there's a 40% drop-off, you may want to have some dry powder on the side. Now, this is not financial advice. I'm just going to tell you what I'm doing. I personally have been saving up money for the past 6 months for this event. The event being Bitcoin dipping after the halving. Now, in the past, this happened for a whole host of reasons. Sometimes it's miners going offline. We know that 15 to 20% of miners historically have gone offline. The question of whether that will happen again, we are yet to see. Some of this is also around tax season. Tax season is April 15th in the United States, and some people may have been selling some of their positions to pay 2023 taxes. There's other macro events like taxes, which may play a part. But overall, should we see a dip in Bitcoin price, you may want to have some money on the side, whether it's $5, $50, $500, $5,000, $5 billion, whatever you have on the side. This may be the last opportunity for maybe the next 18 to 24 months to kind of get some of these lower Bitcoin prices. Now, with Bitcoin around 70,000 today, if that were to happen at 40%, that means that Bitcoin would drop by $28,000, which is a good amount. That means it would go from 70,000 all the way down to 42,000. So if you're an investor in Bitcoin or looking at Bitcoin as an investment, getting ready for the halving is something that you should be considering. Like I said, historically it's dropped by 40%. That does not mean that it's going to happen again, but should it happen, you may want some powder on the side. Once again, this is not financial advice. So there's kind of an overview of the halving. What is going to happen? We don't really know. We can look back at history and say, yeah, the Bitcoin price may drop by 40%. Yeah, this amount of miners may go offline as they're no longer efficient, but only time will tell. Unlike the past halvings, people have really had a time to kind of prepare for this. The public mining companies have been selling some stock, they've been selling some of their Bitcoin and using some of their cash and taking on debt to be able to upgrade some of their miners. And never before a halving have we seen so much institutional money come into Bitcoin. The institutional players who control the ETFs now own something like 3 to 4% of overall Bitcoin. This type of institutional money in Bitcoin may allow the price to kind of stabilize a little more. However, there are other people that would say, no, these are whales and whales can disrupt markets. So what do you think? How do you think the halving is going to go? Are we going to see Bitcoin drop by 40%? Are we going to see 15 to 20% of miners go offline due to having inefficient hardware or maybe not having competitive energy costs? Let me know what you think below in the descriptions if you're on YouTube. And if you're listening to this on a podcast or anywhere, go ahead and follow us at More Than Blockchain on social media and leave some comments below this particular post. The halving is a 1 in 4 year event. It's kind of like the World Cup. Happens once every 4 years, and before you know it, it's over in the blink of an eye. No matter where you're listening to the podcast, please go ahead and subscribe. And if you enjoyed this episode and you think it's important that people understand the halving, please go ahead and share this with a friend, a family member, or a work colleague. Thanks again for checking out this episode of More Than Blockchain, and I'll see you next time.